Old Crothian commander's scales dulled to ash gray as he spoke the forbidden name. The Valari Dominion, he whispered, for eyes scanning the recruit hall for listeners who shouldn't hear. That was the last species that made humans angry, and we don't talk about them anymore. The fresh recruits, barely past their first molting, leaned forward with the eagerness of youth who hadn't yet learned which questions kill. One dared to ask, why not? Commander Thekvar's mandibles clicked, a sound that meant either amusement or terror. With Crothians, it was often both. Because they don't exist anymore. Not their worlds. Not their stations. Not their memory. When humans get truly angry. He paused, remembering. They don't just defeat you. They erase you. The story began 40 cycles ago when the galaxy was different. When the Valari Dominion stretched across 17 systems, their crystalline ships beautiful and terrible as they carved through lesser civilizations. They were gods of their own, making perfect, cold, utterly convinced of their superiority. Humanity had just stumbled onto the galactic stage, still recovering from their own near extinction. 3 colonies. A handful of retrofitted ships. A species that apologized for their customs and smiled too much at diplomatic gatherings. The Valari looked at them the way an apex predator views a limping prey animal. You don't fight humans. You survive them. The first human colony they took was called Haven, Thekvar continued, his voice dropping to funeral tones. A farming settlement. 40,000 souls, families, children, beings who'd never held a weapon. The Valari broadcast the colony's destruction across all frequencies. A lesson, they called it. A demonstration of what happened to species too weak to defend themselves. They made the humans watch as Haven burned, as escape pods were hunted down for sport, as the survivors were processed into nutrient paste for Valari biotanks. The humans asked for their dead. The Valari sent back the paste, labeled Return to Sender. Every species in the galaxy waited for Earth's response. Would they rage? Would they plead? Would they offer tribute to spare their remaining colonies? They didn't speak. They acted. For 7 days, Earth was silent. No communications. No diplomatic protests. Nothing. The Valari took this as acceptance of their superiority. They were wrong. On the 8th day, something changed in human space. Not their technology, that remained primitive by galactic standards. Not their numbers, they were still outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Something deeper shifted, something in the collective human consciousness that predators should recognize but civilized species had forgotten. Their anger wasn't loud. It was surgical. The first sign was the shipping logs. Thekvar's tail twitched in involuntary fear response. Human vessels, cargo haulers, mining ships, anything with an engine started disappearing from commercial routes. When questioned, Earth simply said they were repurposing resources. The Valari laughed. What could humans do with obsolete freighters against the finest war fleet in the galaxy? They prepared to take a second colony to drive the lesson home. They never got the chance. They didn't conquer. They deleted. The Battle of Kepler for 42, that's what the histories call it. But it wasn't a battle. Battles have survivors. Battles have witnesses. Battles leave something behind. 300 human ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Valari Prime's system. Not warships, welding rigs, ice haulers, asteroid miners. Vessels held together by determination and hull tape, crewed by volunteers who'd painted their children's names on the bulkheads. The Valari fleet, 10 times their size, moved to intercept. Their admirals placed bets on how many minutes the human fleet would last. We had fleets. They had resolve. We had weapons. They had purpose. The humans didn't try to match them ship for ship. They did something else. Something that broke every rule of civilized warfare. Each human vessel was a bomb. Not carrying bombs, the ship itself was the weapon. Engines overloaded, reactors set to cascade, holds filled with industrial mining charges. 300 faster-than-light missiles aimed not at the Valari fleet, but through it. At the worlds beyond, the Valari fired everything they had. Plasma lances that could split moons. Singularity weapons that bent space itself. The humans kept coming. You could vaporize 90% of a ship, but if the engine core remained, it kept accelerating. The Valari believed they were gods. But even gods fall when they awaken something older, something buried, something human. The first ship to break through was called the Remembrance. A former cargo hauler whose crew had welded pictures of Haven's dead to every surface. It hit Valari Prime at 70% light speed. Have you ever seen a planet die? Thekvar asked his recruits. Not bombarded. Not conquered. Die. The impact energy turned the atmosphere to plasma. The crust liquefied. 20 billion Valari, the heart of their empire, gone in a flash that outshone their sun. But the humans weren't done. They warned us once. We laughed. We didn't laugh long. Every Volari world, every station, every outpost, the humans came for them all. Not to occupy, not to conquer, to remove. They called it Operation Empty Sky because that's what they left behind. Empty sky where worlds once hung. The galaxy watched in growing horror as humanity systematically erased an empire. No speeches. No demands. No mercy. The Volari tried to surrender, but how do you surrender to silence? They begged for terms, but the only response was more ships, more impacts, more empty sky. You think humans are weak because they smile. But I've seen what happens when they stop smiling. The other species tried to intervene. The Galactic Council called for ceasefire, for negotiation. The humans sent a single message: they killed our children. This ends when they end. Some Volari fled to other species' territories, seeking asylum. The humans followed. Non-invasion fleets, just lone operatives with lists and patient eyes. The refugees vanished one by one. No violence in the streets. No diplomatic incidents. They simply stopped existing. It wasn't just ships they sent. It was memories. Anger refined into vengeance. The last Volari was found on a mining station in neutral space. She was young, barely past hatching when the war started. Had never held a weapon. The human operative who found her looked at this child, this last of a species, and hesitated. The recruits leaned forward. Here, perhaps, was mercy? The operative opened her communicator, spoke to someone on Earth. Then she apologized to the child, genuinely apologized, and completed her mission. Because 40,000 human children on Haven never got the chance to grow up either. It wasn't a war. It was a warning. When it was over, the humans did something worse than killing. They edited every record of the Volari, their art, their history, their achievements deleted from the galactic archives. Their name removed from star charts. Their existence scrubbed from reality itself. As if they had never been. A recruit found his voice. But you remember them. Thekvar's scales rippled. Those of us who lived through it remember. We remember because the humans want us to. They left witnesses among the other species. Living reminders of what happens when humanity stops talking and starts acting. That was the last species that made humans angry. And that's why we don't talk about them. The humans returned to their colonies. Rebuilt. Smiled at diplomatic gatherings again. They never spoke of what they'd done. Never threatened. Never boasted. When new species join the galaxy, they meet these pleasant, helpful humans and wonder why everyone else seems so nervous around them. But we know. We who remember know that beneath those smiles lives a species that will burn the stars themselves for their children. A species that doesn't just defeat enemies but unmakes them. A species that weaponized emptiness itself. The commander stood, old joints protesting. So when you serve alongside humans, remember this: they will share their food with you. They will laugh at your jokes. They will risk their lives for yours. They will be the best allies you could ask for. Just never give them a reason to stop smiling. As the recruits filed out in contemplative silence, one lingered. Commander, what if someone makes them angry again? Thekvar stared at the star chart where 17 systems once shone, now marked only as navigation hazard, uncharted space. Then we'll have another name we don't talk about. The lights dimmed in the recruit hall, leaving only the glow of dead stars and the weight of memory. Somewhere in the galaxy, humans were laughing, loving, living their small lives on their few worlds. And every other species prayed they'd keep smiling. Because the alternative had a name. And we don't talk about them.